You actually own a Tesla, and I don't know that many people who do out in Oroville, California. But as electric cars are getting better and smarter, and especially with Tesla kind of leading this industry, and them being more autonomous, and I think there's going to be other brands as well that are going to start trying to compete with that. We're hearing about Lucid Air and we're hearing about Faraday Future. Do you think anyone really is a runner-up to compete with Tesla? Because right now it feels like they've got the monopoly on electric autonomous cars.
Yeah, the car industry, the more you look at it, the more like insane it is. So startups are rare to succeed in the first place, but startups in the car industry are damn near impossible. So we have Tesla as like this rare young car company that's actually doing something awesome. So we put them on the forefront of this tech now, and it's like, all right, can Mercedes match that? Can Nissan catch up? Can like all Toyota? What can they do? And they're so set in their like slow evolution of exactly what they want to do that they haven't even. I mean, they've started thinking about like that type of stuff, but they're way behind. So I think the best examples of like competitors to Tesla and what they're good at do come from those startups that have that young mentality, that new do everything as well as possible mentality. But financially they just don't last. It's like impossible to be a Lucid Air or to be a Faraday Future right now. Or any of the ones we haven't heard of is so hard.
Yeah.
So it's tough. You kind of have to wait eventually for the older companies to catch up in their tech. And if that's the only way it happens, then Tesla's going to be out in front for a long time.
For sure. And especially if they have a monopoly on where all the lithium batteries are made with the Gigafactory.
Yeah, that's really where they're going to be killing it. That's where they're so far out ahead. It's silly. Because you think about like, okay, electric cars are one thing and then self-driving cars are another thing. Just in electric cars, I think it's gone past the balancing like tipping point where like everyone realizes, all right, we should make an electric car, or we should electrify our whole fleet. Like we should make an electric version of everything. Even once you do that, then you have to get the charging infrastructure of like people decide, okay, now I plug my car in my garage. Like how does this work? You have to figure out, the mind share of convincing people to buy the electric version of the car that you also sell a gas version of. And Tesla is so far ahead of that because they have the Supercharging network everywhere. They have the mind share. The people who buy those cars know what they're getting into. So that's one half. And then the self-driving car half is, again, the same thing where it's like they've been collecting millions and millions of miles of autonomous driving data and putting it back into their machine learning, and it gets better and better and better. And by the time Mercedes puts their first self-driving car out on the road, Tesla's so far ahead it's silly. So you kind of have to respect like just how far ahead they are. And then like you said, batteries, if you're making electric cars, you need batteries. Where are you going to get them?
They've got the biggest in the world.
They're kind of way out in front there.
Right. Yeah, there's not even a close runner-up at this point. And as a Tesla owner, and I think you have a pretty maxed out version of one, do you have any wishes? Like if you could directly ask Elon Musk and change one thing, what's something you might change about your Tesla?
The UI. Yeah.
You're really not that friendly?
It's like, so it is actually, I think it's friendly, it's just ugly. Like it's not pretty. And I've seen so many great mock-ups of like we have iPads now that do this, this ProMotion super high refresh rate, and the UI is nice and clean. I don't know if you've ever played with the UI in a Tesla. Like you look at it and everything is intuitive. You touch the map and the map shows up. You touch the music and the music shows up. You drag it down. Everything works kind of the same way as an iPad, but it's slow and stuttery, and the frame rates are maybe 10 to 15 frames a second, and as you're driving, things refresh and load slowly. I just want it to be like that smooth, like iOS like level software where I don't have to worry about that. So if I were to talk to Elon right now and request something different in a Model S, I'd be like, put a new computer. I wonder if it's the same computer as the original Tesla. Put a new computer behind that screen and push way faster pixels, refresh the UI a little bit. That would be what I want.
And especially because, like, I'm sure it's difficult when you're making cars and people don't buy a new car every year. But a lot of times our computers can get refreshed every 1 or 2 years. So that computer tech in the Tesla is probably getting dated pretty fast when you have a car that lasts several years.
Yeah, they've changed some of it, I know, because Tesla, the way they do it is they don't make a 2016 and a 2015 and a 2014 car.
Right.
They kind of have this slow rolling evolution where they'll add folding mirrors randomly in some month and you didn't even realize it, and they'll add memory seats. So they just kind of add features as it goes, and the car you buy today is better than the one a month ago, is better than the one 2 months ago. So they had at some point added like different GPUs to handle the sensor data from like additional cameras or something like that. So they're adding new computer hardware, but they're just forgetting the UI. Like they should definitely replace that computer too.
That's important. Yeah, that's how you interact with the device itself. That is a big deal, sure. This is a question I try to ask as many people as I can, and I'd really like to ask you because you have so much influence, because I never hear it talked about so much, and I think it's an interesting point. In terms of electric cars and autonomous cars, now there's laws being passed saying you have to have certain safety features like auto brakes, and I think that's just going to get better and better as time goes on. In the distant future, when we have cars that are so smart that they're driving themselves and sometimes it's almost impossible for them to hit something, how do you think insurance companies are going to handle that lack of accident rate? And when we start reaching record low levels of accidents, could insurance companies start selling us firewalls instead of, like body repair?
Yeah. Oh man, there's I think I've had this conversation with a lot of Tesla owners actually, or people curious about Tesla and what it does. Where like they hear the car drives itself and they're like, okay, that's really cool. And the next question they ask is, so like you could go to sleep and it would take you there? And it's like, well, technically yes. And it's like, all right, so like if it crashes, what does insurance say? Whose fault is it? And the answer right now is technically it is, what do they say? Technically it is a form of cruise control. It's a driver assist. So you are still driving, your hands are still on the wheel, but the car is doing all the work. So if there's any accident, it's your fault because you were supposed to take over. And that's the way it is now. And then the way I see it in like 10 years is tons of cars have self-driving. Maybe not 10 years, but like when every car has self-driving and roads are basically like train tracks, you don't have to worry about crashing. They just kind of all do their thing. Then insurance will peg it on the car, and that's a totally different thing. And there's going to be an awkward middle phase where like we don't really know, half the cars are self-driving and Betty driving her, Toyota crashed into a Tesla that tried to avoid her. Like, whose fault is it? There's going to be all kinds of weird stuff like that. And the other weird thing you don't even want to think about but kind of have to address is like the first time a fully self-driving car, whether it's a Tesla or whatever, crashes, like whose fault is it? Because there have been crashes with autopilot on, but every single time it's, autopilot is just driver assist. It's the driver's fault. He should have paid attention. But eventually there's going to be a point where you see all these cars at CES where like the driver's seat is facing backwards. Like there's autonomy planned where you don't even have to look where you're going. What happens when one of those crashes? That's a totally different thing.
We're gonna have a big debate about that, I'm sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of debating and legislation to change for that, but I'm curious about that.
Have you dove into, a lot of people are talking about this kind of the complicated part of when cars are all driving themselves and in the distant future, and they're in a situation where like it has to protect either pedestrians on the street or the driver, like which one it should favor. Have you got into that discussion?
I want to say I had this discussion at some point with Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is kind of hilarious.
Oh, really?
Where we were talking about like, all right, so at some point all the cars on the road are self-driving, and if you want to make a merge like 6 lanes to the right, all the cars will talk to each other and let you make that merge without touching any of them. It'll be perfect. But then you have to write software that like decides which life to save, where I think, and there was also like some hilariously like terrifying way of phrasing it where like you basically like calculate how many years of life remain. Like you have, it's weird. You don't want to think about that, but it's like there's 2 80-year-olds in the car and one little kid in the street. Like, oh, you save the kid in the street by crashing the car because the kid had X years left to live, like that kind of weird thing.
Yeah. that gets out there.
Really tough for computers and humans to figure that stuff out, but it's weird. That's also a great conversation though, and also Neil is hilarious in like all of those conversations.
Yeah, I love that. I love that conversation because there's definitely not a right answer, and it can go either way. And I always theorize like maybe when you get your car in the future, it'll ask for your like morality meter, like save me always, or save those around me.
Calibrate it now. Calibrate how many years you want to be able to save. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And you know, most people would be like, "Oh, save me every time. Save me every time." Right. Like, no, you have to turn it the other way. It's like, oh my goodness.
I could understand both points of view, and I could almost guess based on my friends what they would choose. They're like, "No, always save me," or "No, always save someone else." It's just kind of an interesting like. Maybe one day when AI has its own personality, we'll accidentally program in morality just because of the way we handled the self-driving car.
We have like a do the right thing software update. We just push that right through.
The Windows 10 update that gives you all morality. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I'm excited to see what happens. And I also think it's really cool. I think probably my favorite video you ever did was that Project Love Day application. I thought that was really, really smart and handled well and shot really well.
Thank you.
And I congratulated you for winning that, and you definitely deserved it. I saw the others; they were pretty good, but by far, literally when I watched that Lamborghini drive by at the end, I laughed out loud. I was like, "Oh, that's so accurate." And I saw Elon Musk even tweeted at you. Did you get to meet him? I'm not clear on that story.
Yeah, kind of. So there was the Tesla. So I guess before that, there was the prize unofficially for winning that would be that you get invited to a future Tesla event. But I also just became press certified under Tesla's eyes, so I went to the event anyway. So I was at the Model 3 event. So in the press thing before. There's like maybe 20 something of us all in the press room, and there's like a little stage set up in a sort of a Q&A panel fashion with like 3 seats. So out walks Elon and Franz and another, I forgot his name, an engineering head of Tesla, and they all walk out. And he talks us through the car, and we ask a couple questions basically, and basically all press are like writing their articles at that point. So we got to ask questions. So I asked a question, and that was cool. But yeah, after that, it was just kind of like, cool. So like, what happens now? I think after he left, it was between when he left, I did a test drive, I came back, and then basically like I turned over my phone, and there was like 70 Twitter notifications or something, and I was like, oh, that happened too, and because that also was like, oh, people were congratulating me, and that was really cool to see.
I was one of them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think the funniest part...
Of course, yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah, the weird part was, like, that was one of the first, like, car videos I've really put a lot of effort into shooting that way. Like, you can talk around a car and point a camera at the guy in the driver's seat, but, like, getting moving shots on the road is a totally different story. Like, getting the stoplight shot, getting the Lamborghini pulling up, like, that took an entire day just to get that kind of stuff. So I was new to all of it. It was me and 2 friends, or me and three friends shooting it. And after that announcement gets made, half of the tweets are like, "Oh, he won because he's a YouTuber. Oh, he won because he's got this subscriber count, and it was too easy. You should have let." I think most of it was like, "You should have let like an amateur video maker win," or something like that. But a lot of things you don't realize is like a lot of these other entries are made by like professional, really well experienced production companies like who made incredible videos. So like I was surprised that I won because I felt I saw tons of flaws in my own video, but obviously that's not something I talk about. I just kind of let it go.
Well, plus it's unfair because I mean, if you can afford a Tesla, you're probably not too amateur of a filmmaker anyway if you're going to talk about it in a commercial. Yeah,
and the whole point of the contest, I guess, really was to encourage. Well, I guess originally the idea was Tesla doesn't make ads, so let people make ads for you. So it was like, oh, when are you going to air this? They're not going to air this on TV or anything, but it was kind of a fun project to just let people make, sort of ads or fan videos about Tesla. So I was just happy to contribute because I have the ability to make one and I'm a fan, so I'll make a 90-second video, sure. But yeah,
great.
no, it turned out to be a lot of fun, and the stuff we learned shooting the car that day was actually immensely valuable. Now that I look back, because we've shot some stuff since then, and it's turned out really well.
Cool. Well, yeah, I was really impressed by that. Definitely, I think by far some of your best work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Marquez. It's been an honor talking with you, and I appreciate you finding the time of day. And of course, if you ever want to come back, you're always welcome.
Sure.
Always welcome.